Hi everyone, it's Suey. And I was tagged for this fun tag called Retro 80s Old School Tag. There's an event happening this month of retro celebration. I think this tag was created as part of it by Christine over at Crits Reads, and I was tagged by Melinda at Web of Stories. So let's just jump in. There's a couple of categories, and I'm excited to share some of my 80s memories with you, which are many, because I'm very, very old. The first section is called Reading Rainbow.
A reading rainbow. A reading rainbow.
What book, author, or series got you into reading? So I have answered this one several times lately, so hopefully you're not sick to death of my answers, but my first series that I loved was Little House on the Prairie books, and also Nancy Drew books. Those books, Little House on the Prairie is probably a little bit younger, like, second grade-ish. Nancy Drew, like fourth, fifth grade-ish. And I also very much remember reading, not like the Ramona series from Beverly Cleary, but I remember reading a book called 15 by Beverly Cleary. And I feel like that might have been my very first romance. And I was completely smitten with it. Still remember the feelings I had reading that book, like, oh. Yeah. How old was I when I read 15? I wasn't 15, maybe 13 or 12 or something. That could also be kind of the answer to my next question, which is what author or book got you into your current favorite genre? If I had to say a favorite genre, it would be YA romance, the fun, fluffy rom-coms, right? And this book 15 may have fit in that category-ish. There wasn't really anything called YA back in the day. I don't know when that started becoming a thing, but it was not a thing when I was a YA myself. Maybe that's part of the reason why I love it so much now. I don't know. But I do remember also reading a lot of Phyllis A. Whitney books when I was a teenager in the 80s. And those were romantic suspense books. I looked at the list in preparation for this tag, and she wrote a ton of books, and I have no idea which ones I read. Like, I just know I read a lot of them, and I'm looking at that list and I'm like, I have no idea what these stories are, which ones I read, but I was devouring them as a teenager for the romance and the suspense both. Nowadays, I don't read a whole lot of suspense, but I feel like this author was, Phyllis A. Whitney, was a big part of the things I ended up liking. Okay, now we switch to music. What was the first concert you ever went to? I do not remember, but I feel like the Beach Boys may have been the first one, if not one of the first ones. It's the one I remember going to first with my friends, where we had to buy a ticket and we went to an arena and we went to a concert. And I was in high school, and the Beach Boys by that time were already sort of has-beens. They weren't a huge popular group when I was growing up. They were more popular a little earlier, right? So they were kind of older, and I remember thinking, wow, these guys are old. But I loved their songs, and I knew all their songs, and it was an awesome, awesome concert to go to. Right around that same time, I remember going to Chicago. That's a group, not a place. Chicago two times maybe. I think I saw them twice within a year or two. And also Barry Manilow. Also in high school, I was able to go to Billy Joel and Lionel Richie. All of those concerts I absolutely adored. They were all so amazing. So those are some of my most early concert experiences, I think. Tickets cost like $8. I don't remember fighting for a seat. Actually, there were days when you had to go get tickets at a grocery store and get a wristband, and people fought for that. But I never did that. Since then, I have been to hundreds of concerts, so it's kind of hard to remember what was the first one. But yeah, I think it was probably the Beach Boys. Other music one is, what band or artist do you love but never got to see live? So recently I was able to see MJ the Musical, which is a musical about Michael Jackson. And at the end of that musical, he comes out on stage as if he's starting a concert. And I thought I was going to explode with excitement, because it truly felt like we were at a Michael Jackson concert. So it made me think about that, how I would have loved to have seen Michael Jackson in concert, his 80s persona, his Thriller days. That would have been amazing. It was, the musical was so much fun because it felt like we were seeing Michael Jackson. The actor, there was 3 actors. All 3 of them were so good. And I would have also have loved to see the Bee Gees in concert, because I really, really loved all their stuff. And Andy Gibb. Bee Gees and Andy Gibb along with his brothers, even though he wasn't a Bee Gee, but he was a Bee Gee. Anyway, okay. I also really love the Osmonds, and I did get to see them in concert after they became countrified. I would have loved to have seen them in their 70s style back in the day when they were young and doing rock, but I was too young at that time. When they were in their heyday, I was a little bit too young for concerts, but and then I don't know what they were doing in the 80s. It was like in the 90s that I saw them. And I've seen Donnie and Marie, and just Donnie and just Marie. They were my all-time favorites, but I was able to see them after they were like older.
I always feel like somebody's watching me.
Number 5 is, what was your favorite cartoon growing up? So I do remember getting up on Saturday mornings and watching cartoons, and I'm sure I watched a ton of them, but the only one that really comes to mind is Scooby-Doo, which I loved, and Flintstones, which I thought was hilarious. But on Saturday morning, this wasn't a cartoon, but I really, really loved watching Land of the Lost, but it was real people. Does anybody remember this show? Kids go over a waterfall and they end up in a prehistoric time period, and there's really scary things called slee stacks, and then there's the dinosaurs and the really scary T-Rex, and I was in love with the boy on it, even though I was probably only 12 years old. Do you guys remember this show? It wasn't a cartoon, but it was on Saturday mornings. Name a TV show or movie that is tied to a good memory. So I already mentioned Donnie and Marie. I would watch Donnie and Marie every Friday night without fail. Loved, 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 loved their show. So the funny thing is the place that they taped that show is within walking distance of my house right now. I had no idea when I was a 12-year-old that they were taping that show so close to where I lived. I didn't live here at that time. I lived about an hour away. But the idea that I could have come and watched a taping of their show, and I could have done that. My parents could have figured that out. I think that they let normal people in to the audience. I had no idea that that was within the realm of possibility. So every now and then I think about that and I'm just like, dang, should have figured that out. I also have great memories of watching Emergency on Saturday nights. Having a bath, putting my hair up in the foam rollers, and then watching Emergency. And then sometimes we would actually continue watching and watch Love Boat and Fantasy Island. Great memories. Those two shows were probably a little bit too old for us to be watching, but we watched them anyway. And also Sunday night was The Wonderful World of Disney and the Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys. And I loved those Hardy Boys with all my heart. Name a movie from childhood that you still love today. E.T. and War Games were the first two that came to mind. War Games was out when I was in high school, so I was a little bit older. And then E.T., I probably was in junior high when that one came out, and that one tore my heart out. But of course, I still love them both today. I can't remember what other movies I saw as a kid. Star Wars, duh. Why didn't I think of Star Wars? That should be my answer. So I saw Star Wars when I was 12 years old. It was back in the day when you could just keep sitting through the next showing of the movie. I sat through Star Wars twice in this great big, huge, beautiful, old-fashioned theater with a huge screen and amazing sound. And my dad absolutely loved it, and so he took us to it and we sat through it twice. I was crazy in love with it ever since then. I don't know why I didn't think of Star Wars until just now as I'm doing this, but that would definitely be my answer for that one. And number 8, name your first TV or movie crush. Well, I don't know how old I was. I always think of the Tony. Do you guys remember Tony and Tia from Escape to Witch Mountain? I loved Tony with all my heart. But did that come before or after Star Wars? Like, I don't remember how old I was. But Star Wars, I was probably more in love with Han Solo than I was Luke. But I did love Luke too. Oh, and I loved all those Hardy Boys, both of them, Sean Cassidy. And the other guy whose name I can't think of right now, I loved him too. But I think Tony came first before all those guys. So what toy were you obsessed with or collected as a kid? I do not remember really being obsessed or collecting any particular toy. But I do remember, hang on a second. I forgot to get these show and tells before I started. Whoa. I do remember collecting these cards that were inside bread packages. Wonder Bread, I think it was. These are Star Wars cards. And on the back, if you got them all, you could put a puzzle together from the back. But I just mentioned how I was so into Star Wars. This one has information on the back, kind of like a baseball card. And then there was a blue set and a red set. Wait, those are the red ones. Here's the blue ones. Blue ones and the red ones. So these, I have no idea if these are worth anything. It's not really a toy, but it was something that I remember being very into and being very excited about. And like I said, some of them have information on the back, and then some of them have these things that if you had enough, the right ones, you could put the puzzle together. That one's probably Chewy. I don't remember. I only had a couple Barbies. I had a doll I played with, so I didn't really collect anything though. What is next on the list? Name a board game or video game you associate with your childhood. A board game I loved was Husker Du. It's a memory game. And I remember being so excited when I got my own brand new copy when I was an adult for my kids. So when I was a teenager, I remember playing Pac-Man a little bit and Frogger. I really loved Frogger. Of course, I did not have anything to play with it at my house. I played it at arcades with my friends. I remember any other way I would have played it. There was no such thing as a computer at our house to play a game on. Remember, I'm very old. Name a clothing or trend that was popular when you were a kid. Bell bottoms were kind of the thing when I was a younger kid because I was in the 70s. And then in the 80s when I was in high school, shrink to fit Levi's were the thing. And these were terrible things because you would buy them, they didn't fit you at the time, and they were real stiff and awful rough denim. And then you would come home and wash them a few times, and then they would shrink to be the right size. The more you wore them, the softer and softer and softer they would get, and they would be so comfortable in the end. But it was kind of a thing to guess which size you were. But I did have several pairs of those, and I loved them. They were actually men's jeans, but girls just wore them anyway too, and loved them. Izod polo shirts, I had one, and also Sperry topsiders for shoes, and Argyle sweaters. And later, a little bit later on, towards the later 80s, stretch pants. I had a couple pairs of those, and very colorful big shirts. Name a childhood snack or candy you wish they still made. I can't remember anything. I do remember loving big hunks, and my grandma would get me big hunks every now and then. I'm not sure if that's something that's still made or not. It could still be made. I just don't see it much anymore. Is there such a thing out there as a big hunk? This was a weird candy bar that would really stretchy, sticky stuff and get all over in your teeth. And there was no chocolate, which I think is insane. But I do remember liking those, even so. I loved Milky Way candy bars when I was a kid. So definitely those are still around. I think I got through that one. Fun stuff. Definitely an 80s child. 80s was when I was a teenager. 70s was when I was in junior high and elementary school. And then I got married towards the end of the 80s. So that is how old I am. I know. I probably am the same age as most of people on here's moms. A lot of people on here. I could be your mom, but that's okay. I don't think I'm going to tag anybody because I feel like most people have maybe already done this one because it's been really going around. So if you haven't done it though, and you think that some of these things would be fun to reminisce about, and if you have some awesome 80s memories, I would love to hear them. I would love to hear them and match our stories and see if we have some of the same things. That'd be awesome to know. So do it if you want to. Until next time, happy reading.